Good morning, everyone. We have, by the looks of it, a little over 500 people in our webinar this morning, so we might kick it off. Apologies for the slightly delayed start. Welcome to the supplier webinar that will introduce to you to the new Queensland Procurement Policy 2026, also known as QPP 2026. My name is Andrew Bennett. I have the privilege to be the Deputy Director General for Queensland Government Procurement. This is the business unit within government, which is responsible for stewardship of the whole of government procurement policy framework, procurement assurance, government's fleet management, and one of the government's 6 major procurement companies that corporations spends approximately $35 billion on goods and services. Every taxpayer dollar must deliver more Queensland jobs, more opportunities, better value, and that's where QPP 2026 comes in. The QPP is, of course, the government's playbook for procurement. It sets out what we're trying to achieve and how we're going to do it. This new productivity-focused procurement policy introduces simpler rules and focuses on building stronger partnerships with our suppliers and their buyers. It's our buyers that comply with the policy, but it will impact how they engage with suppliers throughout the procurement process. And so with the sharper focus on small and family businesses, and delivering best-in-class procurement practices that do away with red tape, QPP 2026 will make it easier to do business with government in Queensland. So, what are we going to cover today? We're going to cover off 4 key areas, and hopefully by the end of the session you'll walk away with a better understanding of QPP 2026, what it is, what's actually changing, and how it's going to create those new opportunities for your business. QPP 2026 will also help you understand how our new systems will make it genuinely easier to find tenders, register your business for awareness with government, and to connect with buyers. We're going to show you how to get help where you need it, including training, guidance, and how to find real live humans to talk to. And at the end of the webinar, we'll endeavour to answer as many of your questions as we can in a live Q&A. I and some of my senior staff will be available for you to put the curling questions to us, and hopefully we'll be able to provide you those answers. This is not intended to be just another policy update. It's intended to be a fundamental shift in how Queensland Government does business with the public, and it's designed to break down those barriers and create real opportunities for Queensland suppliers to engage within government supply chain. I can also say at the outset that one of the things we won't be talking very much about today is the government's response to the QPC, or the QPC final report. That's for a separate session. We're really focused on QPP 2026 today, so we'd appreciate it if you could confine your questions to that. How are you going to get the most out of today's session? Look, we are recording it, and so all the registered attendees are now up to 673. We did have about 1,800 register to join the session this morning. I will get a link with a recording after the event. If you have a problem during the session, please email that one that you see on the screen there, procurementpolicy@qld.gov.au. Use the Q&A button on the right-hand side of the screen to ask a question. And then as we go through the session, if you like a question that's been submitted, you can vote on it, and that'll help us understand that that's something that has a lot of interest from those on the session today, and we'll try and answer those first. If you have a specific question about your business or your situation, maybe you're tendering for a particular contract, or you're not sure how a change is going to affect your company specifically, please email us at the bottom email address on the screen there, betterprocurement@hpw.qld.gov.au. We'll provide you with a personalised response, and hopefully we'll be able to get through as much as we can today. You're going to hear me speaking for around about 20 minutes. I apologise. I've got quite a lot to get through, but I hope to be able to go through it relatively smoothly. And if you've got questions along the way, of course, do use the button to throw them up within the screen. So, introducing the Queensland Procurement Policy 2026. Look, as I said at the outset, government spends about $35 billion a year on goods and services. Obviously, we are committed to providing the best possible outcomes and value for taxpayers' money. Every procurement decision made by a government employee represents an investment in our future, and we know that the public, I'm a member of the public, I expect strategic, transparent and consistent decision-making that delivers that maximum value through partnerships. Government has also reinforced its commitment to dealing with ethical suppliers who are committed to delivering those outcomes to the community and working with government to make sure we're getting the best possible value from every one of those dollars spent. QPP 2026 is already in effect. It commenced on the 1st of January 2026 and applies to all Queensland Government agencies, from departments to statutory bodies to government corporations. For convenience, we're going to call all of those people buyers today. Let's start with the bottom line though. As a supplier, what does this policy mean for you? It's designed at its actually fundamental roots to make it easier to do business with government. This policy will create more opportunities for Queensland suppliers to engage with government's procurement with a stronger focus than ever on engaging local businesses, small and family businesses and regional suppliers in the supply chain. This is not just a lofty ambition. It's built into how agencies are going to be approaching procurement in the future, and it will be reflected in all of the things you see today and our behaviours moving forward. Policy ensures a better balance between fiscal responsibility and delivering those purposeful public procurement choices, making sure that our communities continue to benefit from all the amazing things that we do, and that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander businesses, social enterprises and local businesses are all equally represented within the policy. Something we know that's previously been a real pain point for suppliers is the variation in the way that agencies procure and market. Different agencies doing different things in different ways. You might have had the experience where one department wants your proposal formatted one way and another wants it formatted completely differently. One asks for certain documentation at one point in the tendering process and another not until the end. It's that inconsistency which drives friction into the process and ultimately cost, because it costs more for you to do the work. QPP is intended to drive greater consistency across all agencies with the same rules, same processes and the same expectations at play. It's designed to use standardised contracts and to encourage simplicity in the way that we approach the market. This policy reflects a period of intense consultation with industry over the course of nearly 9 months last year, buyers and community stakeholders. If you're doing business with Queensland Government's policy, it's going to affect you. So at the end of the day, the message we want to take away is pretty simple. Whether you're new to government procurement or whether you're an experienced supplier who's been engaged for decades, it is now going to be genuinely easier to find those opportunities, to understand what's required of you, to respond to the tenders and win the work from us. So at a glance, what's one of the most obvious changes about the policy? Well, we've taken nearly 700 pages of policy documents across multiple things and dropped it to 52 pages of plain English. There were inconsistent definitions and it was very, very hard and quite challenging, I think, to understand what people wanted you to do. We will see a more consistent application of rules across agencies and a support-based approach to our compliance function, which is now focused on assurance, building capabilities and help before penalties. So let's think about that stuff on the left-hand side of the screen. Part one, of course, is the Queensland procurement approach. This is the why and what. It outlines the visions, targets, actions and outcomes that we're working towards and sets the strategic direction for all Queensland Government procurement throughout the state. Part two is the procurement rules. This is the how. Clear, practical rules that set the clear boundaries for agencies on how procurement is going to be delivered day to day on the ground. Part three is our procurement assurance model, or the PAM. It's a new incentive-based approach to procurement compliance that replaces the old ethical supplier mandate and the ethical supplier threshold, moving away from punitive rules, break a rule, faces action, to an environment which encourages partnership and support for our business partners. Part four is a glossary, making sure that we do have consistent terms and definitions across the board so we're all speaking the same language. And part five is a record of changes. For the first time ever, the QPP will maintain a public record of future changes to the document, providing transparency with version control so you can always see what's changed and when. In fact, if you go to the version of the policy that's on the website right now, you'll see we've already reflected some of those changes the government has made earlier on in the policy. Where we can, we've also elevated separate policy documents directly into the QPP. This reflects our commitment to making things easy to understand, to make the document simpler, yet retaining the importance of those targets the government intends to pursue. More clarity within the rules about which apply to which entities and which rules are mandatory. So less confusion about obligations and less chance for agencies to correctly interpret or apply the rules differently. We're doing our best to strike a balance between responsible spending and our continued pursuit of better outcomes for Queenslanders. And more importantly, this new policy structure supports future consultation and continuous improvement so that the QPP stays relevant and evolves as we need to. One of the ways that we'll see that is a commitment from our Minister to undertake annual consultation with industry through a series of roundtables and other venues to to ensure that we are reflecting our feedback on how the policy is operating and providing opportunities for government to improve continuously. If I boil it down to three simple concepts, PPP 2026 is about making procurement simpler, faster and better. A unified approach to purchasing across government, reducing red tape, increasing the clarity and transparency, and ensuring that there are more opportunities with streamlined processes to make it easier and faster to get through. It's about trying to make sure that we are working side by side to deliver those shared goals and support greater collaboration with agencies and suppliers, big and small. For us, this isn't just empty words, it's a reality of how we will be working moving forward. The extensive consultation process between agencies and industry that led to this occurred over a period of 9 months in 2025 and has really led to what we believe is the national leading benchmark in terms of a procurement framework that will support the work that government does, so that you can spend more time doing what you do and less time responding to government tendering opportunities. So let's dive deeper into part one of the Queensland procurement approach, based around 5 pillars. Pillar 1, of course, is value for Queensland. First and foremost, we need to ensure that we are getting value for taxpayers' money and ensuring that there is fair and open competition for those opportunities. This does mean, of course, the government isn't just looking for the cheapest price. Quality matters as well as being able to demonstrate you're delivering the outcome the government is looking for. Your track record matters. Outcomes matter. Overall, our buyers are looking for the best inclusive outcome for Queensland. Pillar 2 is about local opportunities. This is a clear commitment from government, wherever practical, to create opportunities for local suppliers, with a particular emphasis on small and family businesses and ensuring that regional enterprises continue to benefit from the value of government procurement. If you want to be considered a local workforce, your workforce must be within 250 kilometres of your permanent place of business or established presence, and you no longer need to recalculate local for every job and every location. If you're a Queensland supplier, especially if you're a small or regional supplier, you're now going to be in scope, and that's a genuine advantage in procurement decisions. Pillar 3 is where we really start to make it easier to do business with us. Government is committed to simpler processes, less red tape, clearer requirements and simpler forms. With the goal of emphasising digital first for our procurement tools and solutions, we want to make sure that you spend less time jumping through administrative hoops and more time focusing on the quality of your actual proposal. You will see as we move forward and as we start to bring more digital tools to bear in our procurement solutions, streamlined forms, standardised templates, smarter documents, and a commitment to only ask for documentation and information at a point in time when it's actually needed throughout the process. No more requiring suppliers to undertake and provide every piece of information, every piece of insurance documentation up front. We will only be asking for those when we need them, saving the time and money in terms of responding to our tendering opportunities. Pillar 4 is one of the ones that I think has probably had the most change for us. We heard loudly and clearly through our consultation process last year that we wanted to make sure that we had greater opportunities for innovation. Our solutions previously around tendering was highly prescriptive and didn't afford those opportunities for innovative solutions to be brought to bear from the market. What we are trying to do now is to make sure that we are actively encouraging innovative approaches and new market-driven solutions to those curly problems that government faces. If you have a new approach, a creative solution or a better way to solve a problem, we want to hear about it. We want you to bring that to the government. We want you to bring that to those tendering opportunities. And one of the key changes is that you no longer have to have completed a compliant bid to do so. We are very interested in alternative proposals and alternative solutions. So please make sure you consider that when you are responding to our tenders. Pillar 5 is where we continue to ensure that we have a practical lens on economic, environmental and social outcome. Government is building a diverse supplier base, whether you're a social enterprise, an Aboriginal or a Torres Strait Islander supplier, or if you have strong sustainability practices, these aren't just nice to haves. They are things that government is committed to continuing to see in our procurement. They're not just standalone, they all work together. So these 5 pillars are embedded at the core into how agencies are now required to design and evaluate procurements and provide a foundation that flows through the rest of the policy, through our category strategies, into agency procurement plans and ultimately into each and every procurement that we bring to market, all the way through from part 2 to part 5 of the remainder of the policy. So I have talked a little bit about some of our supporting government commitments. These are those ones that we elevated from separate policy documents into the main part of the QPP, signifying their enduring importance and criticality to government. So government is still interested in making sure that we provide opportunities for small and medium enterprises and small and family businesses to participate. There is a target of 30% SME participation by value across all government contracts, plus additional measures to ensure that there are opportunities for regional businesses and subcontractors. What this means, more tenders designed for organisations of this size. If you're an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander business, we are committed to 3% of procurement value by target. That's not 30%, I'm sorry. And this means that we are ensuring that there are opportunities for those businesses to continue to be part of our supply chain, and government wants to continue to partner with you. This is a real pathway into government procurement work, and I'm pleased to confirm that for the first time last year, we achieved the 3% procurement target by value for our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander spend under the government's procurement policy, and we look forward to expanding and extending that as we move forward. For all Queensland suppliers, we are looking for new transparency measures. Government is now publishing spend data and procurement category strategies so that you can see what it is we're trying to achieve moving forward over the next couple of years. Each of the 6 major categories will be publishing a public strategy online, which will detail at a high level what their objectives and commitments are going to be, and those targets and strategies will flow forward into each of the individual agency procurement plans. If you're a social enterprise, there are clear targets to increase spend with businesses like yours annually. The value that you're delivering to the community isn't something that is just an afterthought or an add-on. It's something that can significantly differentiate you in a tender evaluation process. And what I'll talk about in a little bit is the purpose of public procurement outcomes that are now required to be part of every significant procurement decision government makes. We manage billions annually in procurement spend. These commitments are about ensuring that we direct value to Queensland suppliers, to local businesses and businesses that are creating the positive outcomes the government needs to see happening in the community. So let's move on to part 2 of the Queensland Procurement Rule. This is the absolute expression of how agencies are going to deliver procurement at the coalface, at the front. These replace the clauses that you've seen previously under QPP 2023, but are designed to be clear, unambiguous, and reflect exactly what we want agencies to do. There are clear standards, and we've standardised on must, should, and may. A must seems pretty obvious. It's a mandatory thing. Agencies are obligated to follow these rules. For example, agencies must publish open tender opportunities on key tenders. As a supplier, you can rely on that. You should know that you're going to key tenders to look for those opportunities. Should means best practice. It's strongly encouraged, and this is what agencies are expected to do. For example, agencies should be engaging early with industry in the procurement planning stage. We want to see greater early contractor engagement to ensure that there is clarity around requirements and that we have opportunities to consider alternative approaches and solutions before we get into the tendering itself. A may means agencies have flexibility to respond and apply those rules based on the procurement activity and their local context. As a supplier, you can now read the policy and understand exactly what an agency is required to do, what they should do, and where they have some of that flexibility. The rules are designed to remove ambiguity and let you have a clear picture on understanding what exactly you can expect to happen. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the procurement lifecycle within the process itself. The rules for buyers, as you read through the policy, by the way, are grouped around the procurement lifecycle, designed to lead you through that process so that you can understand at each stage what it is agencies are going to be doing. There are some key changes to the lifecycle, which I do want to highlight for you today. In the early planning stage, there is an increased focus on early market engagement to drive those better outcomes that I talked about. We want people to consider the full product life cycle, including waste reduction and disposal at the end of the day as well. There is a requirement for agencies to right-size projects, which means that it's okay to run with similar projects for economies of scale. But at other times, the goal will be to break down those large contracts into smaller pieces for delivery in regions or by smaller suppliers to encourage that greater participation in the supply chain, particularly by small and family, regional suppliers and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander businesses. We're working with Tier 1 suppliers, often called leads or principal suppliers, to facilitate those opportunities for local or SMEs to access supply chain opportunities as part of the broader delivery of those projects. We also want to make sure that suppliers and buyers consider cybersecurity risks associated with that procurement early on in the process. including how the management of personal and private information is undertaken and secured throughout all of the delivery. During the sourcing phase, we want to ensure that there is greater consistency for suppliers, and agencies must use one of those 6 procurement categories relevant to what they are buying to deliver what they're looking for. Information that's used to assess suppliers' offers will be sought only just in time. I talked about that a little bit earlier. Only providing information if you're shortlisted, or, for example, requesting evidence of insurances only if you're recommended as a successful supplier. We've included a requirement for suppliers to be able to submit alternative offers first, rather than requiring a confirming offer. This policy also includes the obligation for an upfront payment of 30% of the contract for small businesses if you're a successful offerer, to ensure that we can look after cash flow and to provide opportunities to mobilise if you're the successful tenderer. We've already seen that this has been tremendously successful in some of the opportunities that have been brought to market, and so we're having great feedback on how this is working for small and medium enterprises. During contract award, we want to see greater emphasis on meaningful and quality feedback for suppliers. If you want feedback on your offer, you can ask, and I can guarantee you it will be provided. There will be sensible and thoughtful feedback and detail, not just you weren't as good as somebody else. And I strongly encourage you to seek that in the tendering process, especially when you are dealing with alternative offers, making sure that you get that. Contract management, of course, requires that we continue to pay close attention to what the contract deliverables look like, that we do so in a timely manner, and that we work with suppliers to ensure that we're not just paying lip service to those KPIs, to those deliverables, and that the value that's been proposed through the contracting process is ultimately being delivered at the end of the day. And before extending or renewing contracts, agencies are absolutely required to assess and document what supplier performance was like. Did they meet the targets and the requirements? And are we ensuring that we're achieving ongoing value? So hopefully we can ensure that we're not being locked out of opportunities to bid on work simply through extensions of contracts. The old argument is, oh, I don't have enough time, is no longer an acceptable excuse for not following a robust tendering process. One of the other significant changes to each of those categories that I talked about is that we've been very clear now around the definition of a common use supply arrangement. Pre-qualified panels, often called supplier arrangements or standing offer arrangements, are now being selected and identified by each of those 6 categories and potentially chosen as a common use supply arrangement. What this means is that if a category identifies a common use supply arrangement, agencies must check that first, see if it can satisfy their requirement before going to open tender or establishing a competing arrangement. Think of it as a short list of government-approved suppliers to simplify those procurement processes. There are a couple of benefits to this. It means that we are concentrating the government spend on the suppliers on those arrangements. Because we have pre-established them, we've had the opportunity to go through most of the detailed procurement processes, and so we're hoping that by doing that we will end up with a shorter, more expedited process to deliver those goods or services that are subject to those arrangements. And we're ensuring that the work of tendering to get onto those arrangements is being done by the opportunities to participate in the tendering that is being done. We've established these arrangements to make sure that they provide cost-effective and efficient ways to buy products and services, and so that those agencies then are able to use them to get the maximum value for it. Unless, of course, there's a specific exemption which is detailed within the policy itself, and that would be if you're using one of those regional outcomes or you're looking for one of the PPP outcomes. So how does this impact you? Many of those opportunities never actually reach open tender. Buyers will go to those panels now to provide those services. If you're unsure whether there's an arrangement in place for the products or services you sell, you can check the Queensland Government Arrangements Directory and it will tell you if there's an arrangement, which agency managers that are who to reach out to if you have questions. What's really important is categories now have to have a robust and regular process for reassessing those arrangements, for ensuring that as the market changes and as our requirements change, they are reopened and that there are opportunities for new suppliers to join those panel arrangements moving forward. Agencies will, of course, be considering how these arrangements are established from time to time and working through each of the categories to make sure that we maintain optimum effectiveness of those arrangements. Last thing I wanted to talk about really is the idea of these purposeful public procurement outcomes. I talked previously about the idea that every significant procurement decision now must consider these outcomes that government wants us. There are 12, by the way. And if you are undertaking a significant procurement, government now requires that an agency considers a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 4. And this is to ensure that each of these things is considered in a way that is relevant to the specific procurement at that point in time. An agency, for example, could decide on any individual significant procurement that they want to concentrate on local benefits to the community in the area, including local workforces or the use of local suppliers in the supply chain. It could be an opportunity to ensure that that tender supports the establishment of local manufacturing capacity, or an increase in spend with small and family businesses and medium enterprises. It might be an opportunity to focus on spend with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander businesses, or social enterprises, or female-owned businesses. And for the first time included within our procurement framework, an opportunity to consider the preferencing of tenders towards organisations that are owned by or employ veterans, or support veterans transitioning from the Australian Defence Force to civilian employment. Particularly important because Queensland is the state in which we have the highest resident proportion of veterans from the ADF. Now, what's really, really important is that each agency, as they're procuring, gets to decide which are the ones that are most important for the procurement that they're undertaking. For example, if the Department of Education was delivering a significant procurement activity designed to enhance the facilities at a school in Cowan, we might be looking at making sure that we're preferencing spend with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander businesses and working on benefits to local communities and local organisations. On the other hand, if you're undertaking significant procurement in Townsville, it would be sensible to look at opportunities that preference those organisations which support the transitions of veterans to the ADF. The weighting for each of these individual criteria must be between 5 and 10%, with a maximum weighting of 10 to 20% in aggregate for that particular procurement. So if you do the math, 4 at 5, 2 at 10, and so on. And these are being tracked and reported on by QGP, and we'll be able to use that for the categories now to demonstrate the effectiveness of each of those significant outcomes in terms of the way the government's going to take things to market. So that's the last of my slides. I hope that little quick run through the QPP has given rise to some additional questions for you as we move forward on into the session. What I'd like to do now is hand over to Chris Perkins, the Executive Director in our Procurement Assurance Branch, who'll tell you about the new Procurement Assurance Model, or the PAM 2026. Chris, take it away.
All right, thanks, Andrew, and thanks to the nigh on 800 suppliers who've currently online. I'd like to start with really saying what is the need for a procurement assurance mechanism. If we can go to the next slide. The government has made some significant public statements and policy statements, such as it wants to maximise value, wants to respect taxpayers' money, and that can be seen in lots of different ways. For example, it's not just, as Andrew's spoken about, the value of the money, but it's about if the state engages one of your businesses and pays a certain fee for it, and you've made certain commitments to whether it's Indigenous business or employing locals, but if that is not delivered, then the full cost of the money, the full respect of the taxpayer money that went into that contract has not been reached. So there's lots of different ways of looking at respect for taxpayers' money. The government's very keen on increasing engagement to small and family business, and it wants to ensure, it's been very clear about this, that it wants to make sure that workers on government contracts and projects are well paid and safe. And so they're important principles, but you need a mechanism to assess that and to test that to ensure that there is some meat on the bone and that those public commitments are actually delivered in practice. And so the procurement assurance model you can see on the screen there, I'll go through some of the detail as we go through, but it streamlines the process, it's simpler, and it provides that mechanism, which I'll talk about, that ensures that those public commitments of the government have been made. So it's important for suppliers here who are used to the old system, which involved the ethical supply mandate, the ethical supply threshold, and for contracts over $100 million, the best practice principles, and the old compliance system. What is the difference? What's the difference between the two? Well, the old system, a supplier who made fairly low-level breaches of the ethical supply threshold could face a sanction, which was you could be expelled from the government supply chain. That's shifted so that where those matters are minor or moderate, you'll be directed towards capability building. So we'll give you some assistance to correct whatever the gap is, to fix things up, to make to remuneration or whatever is required, systems improvement. And if that's complied with, then that's the end of the matter. So it's a less onerous and punitive system. The old system was quite inflexible and there was a lot of red tape. So there are lots of different policies, as I've said. There was the mandate, there's the threshold, there's the BPP, etc. Now the focus is on the supplier code of conduct. It's the centrepiece. And that also existed under the previous system, but now it's really the centre. So it's a streamlined system that suppliers can understand more easily. The old system was very focused on construction. That changes. This system now, as part of the QPP 26, applies to all procurement. So the assessments that we do will be spread more evenly across all forms of procurement. The other system, as I said, was punitive. It did not have a system of incentives or indeed capability building. The new system will do that. I'll talk about that shortly. The training that we offered also under the old system was basically for government departments. There was nothing for suppliers. We are changing that, where we'll be providing that for suppliers. And also there were various aspects of the old system that didn't really reflect global best practice. So the new system ensures all of those things are reflected in the supplier code of conduct and are therefore able to be assessed under our new system. So as I mentioned, the supplier code of conduct is at the centre of it. A new version's been published. You'll see it online. It applies to all procurement, and it is the document that sets out the ethical, the social, the environmental, etc. requirements that the government has of suppliers, and it outlines what a responsible supplier would do. It has within it, as Andrew mentioned in the QPP, it's a bit the same with the supplier code of conduct. There are musts and there are shoulds, and what we focus on from the assurance side of it is the musts. So what we do with the assurance model framework, we've basically reflected in that framework all of the musts that are in the supplier code of conduct, and they're items 2, 3 to 10 that you can see there. I won't read through it because as I'm speaking, you can look at those. But the number one is also the PPPs, the purposeful public procurement components that Andrew's just gone through in detail. Again, they will be subject to our assessments to ensure that those commitments, as well as the commitments under the supplier code of conduct, are met. So the new model really has 3 components, and I'll briefly talk about each of the 3. They are capability building. That's where we give suppliers support to correct any gaps that they have to meet those standards. It involves the accountability component, and that's the component where we basically do assessments to ensure that those commitments that we spoke about earlier are met. And then there's the incentive scheme. That's the component that doesn't come in until January 1. And now I'll go through each of those 3 just to give you a little bit more detail about each of the 3. So capability building, it effectively starts from January 1. There's always been a component in the work that we've always done in our branch of capability building. So when our team will do assessments, they will see gaps in the process of dealing with suppliers throughout that, I guess, investigative process. Things get fixed up, systems get improved. So that process continues, and it's been really valuable. We've got a bit of a record of lots of improvements that have happened just as a result of the process that we go through. That continues. We are adding to that, though. Hopefully in the next few weeks, we will publish a sort of a one-stop shop of other government resources that link to those supplier code of conduct commitments. So there'll be some links in relation to work health safety. There'll be some links in relation to paying your staff properly. There'll be some links in relation to natural justice and transparency and conflicts of interest and those things. So that will happen. We will then go to industry. We're going to deal direct with some of the peak bodies that probably a number of people on this, suppliers on here may well be members of, and we'll see what content they have that could also be useful, because they are particularly directed towards suppliers and business. And so we'll see, we'll do an analysis of that to see what we can add to our side, obviously with their permission. We've already had some really productive talks with some of those peak bodies, for example, the Business Chamber and the Master Builders and some other bodies. So we will add to that as time goes on. So the capability component will grow over time. The accountability component is that component that does the assessments and the checks. The purpose is, as we've talked about, is to ensure that that those commitments are met. The tools are the policies. There are now 3 categories. There's minor, moderate and major, and the sanction or the expulsion from the government supply chain now only affects the major, and a lot of activities that once would have fit into that category no longer fit into that. How do we assess that? Well, we do proactive assessments. We will be guided by the category councils within state government, across the state government procurement, about what they might think might be some high risk areas. We'll do some proactive assessments on that. We will also, there is a capacity for people to lodge a complaint, and we will conduct investigations. And then if a government department has an issue, they can also come to us. So they're the 3 ways that we will look at those commitments. And the third area is the incentives. Did we miss? Yes, there it is. The incentive scheme. We're working on that to develop that to come in from January 1. We want it to be real. We want those incentives to actually mean something to business, and we will be talking to, again, business representatives to develop those incentives. So there'll be quite a bit of consultation go around that. It'll be voluntary. You don't have to participate in it. We're hoping for a single streamlined system, so you won't be required, if you want to apply for one of the incentives, you won't be required to fill out like a tender document or a whole new process or procedure. There'll be a very simple couple of tests that we will look at that will assess you for your eligibility for the incentive scheme. But as I said, just hold your breath for that until January 1 and we will get there. So, but it is an entirely new system, and one we think that will really add value to suppliers to engage and to assist you to get more government work, and as well as build your reputation as a business and as a supplier. And it could also be a marketing thing you could use in your general business, not just in relation to government business. And that is now I'll just talk about the responsibilities of principal contractors, and by that I mean contractors who engage subcontractors who do government work. So you'll be required to ensure that your subcontractors also comply with the Supplier Code of Conduct. We'll want to ensure that if you have committed to any of those PPPs or any specific commitments, and you and your subcontractor supply chain needs to play a role in delivering that those commitments are very clearly in their contracts, in the contracts that you have with them, so that can be easily tested. There's also a requirement, as many of you will know, that the subcontractor list needs approval from the procuring agency, so you will not be able to engage any suppliers that are sanctioned in your subcontractor supply chain. And of course, if you become aware as a principal contractor of any issues in relation to breaches of the Supplier Code of Conduct, or indeed the contract itself, you can send those through to us, and we can have a look at those for you. So that's a service we would be providing. And that's it. That's it for the procurement assurance model. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Great to hear about how we're making providing opportunities to make it easier to do business with us, and that's really the theme of what I'd like to talk about. My name's Peter Lacey. I am Executive Director of Procurement Policy for the Queensland Government, and in particular, I'd like to talk to you today about some brand new digital systems which accompany the launch and commencement of QPP. We believe these systems will continue to revolutionise the way the government does business with suppliers, and I'd invite you to think of them as a toolkit for finding and winning government work. Even before you bid, we're creating opportunities to think strategically about doing business with us. The procurement spend portal shows you where government money has spent, where government has spent money historically, which agencies, which categories, and how much. You can use this to understand opportunities in your industry. The forward procurement pipeline shows what's coming up, tenders that haven't been released yet but are planned. This helps you plan ahead so you're not scrambling when those opportunities actually appear. When you're looking for the opportunities, the new Q tenders website is you'll go to. It's been completely redesigned. It's easy to search, works on mobile, and connects all the systems. You can search by agency, by category, by region, and more. To make yourself visible, you can register in the supplier portal, create a profile in our supplier marketplace. This is a section of the Queensland Procurement Solution, and it's how buyers can find you. When they're planning a procurement, they can search that marketplace for suppliers in specific categories and regions. If you're not registered, you're not visible. When you're actually responding to a tender, you'll use the Queensland Procurement Solution. This is where you download tender documents, submit your response, and track your application status. The key is that all these systems connect. They're designed to work together to make your experience smoother. Most of you will be familiar with Q tenders, but we're excited to announce that we've completely refreshed the Q tenders website, and you're going to notice that difference immediately. We've developed a modern, clean interface that's actually designed for how you work today. The search function has been improved. It allows you to filter by agency, category, region, closing date, whatever makes sense for you, how you look for opportunities. For example, if you're an IT supplier in Brisbane, you can search for all IT tenders in your region, closing in the next 30 days. No more scrolling through irrelevant opportunities. It's mobile friendly, so you can check on new tenders on your phone, during your lunch break, between meetings, or when you're on the tools. There are direct links that will take you through the supplier marketplace, where you can submit your response once you're registered, making it easy to take advantage of the opportunities you find. And here's something important. You can browse for opportunities on Q tenders without logging in. You only need to log into your account when you're actually ready to download tender documents and submit your response. This makes it easier to casually explore what's available. The web address is the same, qtenders.epw.qld.gov.au, so your existing bookmarks will continue to work. So if you have bookmarks to specific pages within the old site, you may need to update those. This new site is live now. After the webinar, I invite you to go and check it out, explore these new search functions, and set up some filters for your industry and to get familiar with. The supplier portal I mentioned before is how to get on government's radar before tenders are even published. Think of it this way. The supplier portal is where you register your account. It's the login system. The marketplace is your business profile within that system. It's your shop window to government buyers. Setting up your account takes only about 10 to 15 minutes. You'll need your ABN, your contact details, and your basic business information. That gets you registered. But here's where the real value is. Building out your marketplace profile. This is where you detail what you offer, your products and services, the the regions you cover, your certifications, your capabilities, your track record. So why does that matter? It matters because before agencies publish a tender, they often search the marketplace for potential suppliers. They might be planning a procurement and want to understand what's available in the market. They might be deciding whether to run a public tender or approach suppliers directly. If you're not in the marketplace, you'll be invisible during that planning stage. A complete, detailed profile gives you a competitive advantage. Buyers who want to find you might invite you to early engagement sessions where you can influence how the tender is designed. They might request a direct quote. At a minimum, they know you exist and they'll know what you offer. This is particularly important for small and regional businesses. If a buyer is trying to find a local supplier or a small business in a particular category, they'll be using that marketplace to find you. The URL for the portal is supply.qld.gov.au. If you're not already registered, do have a look at that in this webinar. If you've registered years ago and haven't updated your profile, please go back and look at it and update it when it's necessary. Make sure it accurately reflects what you're offering today. The Queensland Government has recently finished the rollout of our new procurement platform across agencies, which helps them to identify potential suppliers, conduct procurement activities, and manage arrangements and contracts. This is the platform that the supplier marketplace sits inside, and it's called the Queensland Procurement Solution, or the QPS. The policy outlines that government buyers are now required to use the QPS whenever practical. So your business will be more visible than ever to government buyers once you're registered. For the first time you respond to the QPS, you'll need to register your business. But once you've created your account, you're set for all future tenders. When you see an opportunity you want to bid on, log in, download the tender documents. This includes the full requirements, the technical specifications, the evaluation criteria and response templates. Everything you need to prepare your bid. You'll then prepare your responses offline. No need to stay connected or in the QPS to complete your proposal. Download the documents, work on the proposal at your own pace, get it reviewed and refine it. No need to fill out forms online in one setting. When you're ready, you upload your complete response through the system. Please make sure you do that before the deadline. The system is very strict about closing times. You'll receive a confirmation that your response was submitted successfully. After submission, you can log back in, check in the status of your application. You'll see updates on the process as the process moves forward. The QPS is user-friendly. The screenshot currently on the screen is the supplier dashboard, where you can see different opportunities. Up the top left, opportunities you've selected to follow. Up to the top right, you'll see opportunities that match your categories. Down to the bottom, you'll see what you have been invited to respond to. Responses are submitted through the system. The built-in wizard steps you through the process of creating your response, and you can save a draft at any stage and come back to it later. If this is all new to you, don't worry. There are training guides and support materials available at supplier.qld.gov.au website that walk you through the whole process step by step. The system is designed to be secure and fair. More buyers and suppliers using the same platform, submitting in the same way. That's how we create. Within the system, we've introduced a new badging function for social enterprises, specifically to increase their visibility to government buyers. If you're certified as a social enterprise with either Social Traders or People and Planet First, you'll now automatically receive a badge next to your name in the procurement solution. Think of this like a verified check mark. It immediately identifies you as a certified social enterprise. Why does that matter? Because government has social procurement targets. Buyers are actively looking for social enterprises that can deliver social, economic and environmental benefits alongside their core services. Previously, they had to dig through your proposals or ask suppliers directly. Now they can simply filter the search results to show only certified social enterprises. This means that you're more visible. When a buyer is planning a procurement, consider social enterprises, they can find you easily. When they're comparing potential suppliers, your certification is immediately apparent. This isn't just a nice to have badge, it's a tool that helps buyers meet their social procurement goals, which means it helps you to win work. If you're not yet certified, but you think you might qualify as a social enterprise, I encourage you to explore the process with People and Planet First or Social Traders. Their websites and recognition processed are easily accessible through Google search. And stay tuned. We're planning to introduce badging for other supplier categories in the future. The goal is to make it easier for buyers to find and engage with suppliers that help government achieve its procurement goals. Now, I mentioned before one of the most valuable tools available to suppliers, which not everyone knows exist, is the forward procurement pipeline. This is essentially a window into the future of government procurement. It shows you upcoming tender opportunities before they're published, sometimes months and even years in advance. The policy has expanded the notice period to up to 10 years. Now, this time frame might not always be available, but the intent is clear. Why should this worry you? Because it lets you plan ahead strategically instead of just reacting to tenders when they appear. Right now, there are 814 opportunities listed worth $3.63 billion. These are actual procurements that agencies are planning to go to market with. For example, say you're an IT services company and that you see that in 6 months, 3 different agencies are planning major IT projects. You now have 6 months to prepare. Maybe you need to get a specific certification. Maybe you should form a partnership with another supplier to build the capability required. The pipeline gives you the lead time to prepare properly. Or maybe you're a small business and you see a large project coming. You can then reach out to large suppliers who may be bidding and position yourself as a subcontractor. The pipeline gives you visibility to build these relationships before the tender drops. You can filter the pipeline by your industry, by region, by agency, by whatever makes sense for your business. See what's coming, understand trends in your sector, and plan your business development strategy. We update the pipeline quarterly, so please check it regularly. Its URL is qtenders.hbw.qld.gov.au/FPB, and that's on screen now. It's all about transparency and fairness. Government saying, here's what we're planning to go to open market for. No surprises. Everybody can see what's coming. Another powerful tool for looking both backward and forward in terms of procurement is the new Queensland Government Procurement Spend Portal. For the first time, The Queensland Government is publishing detailed, searchable data on where it spends taxpayers' money. These aren't just aggregate numbers, this is detailed data you can actually use. You can see spend by category, how much government spends on IT services, construction, manufacturing, consulting, whatever your industry is. You can see spend by region, what typical opportunities will exist in that local area. And you can look back as far back as 21-22 financial year. So this ushers in a new era of unprecedented transparency on our government spend. The portal is at qld.gov.au/procurement/spend, and it will only improve over time as enhanced analytics will allow us to uncover trends, optimise contracts and understand gaps. So please go and explore it, search your industry and understand your market, and use the data to think strategically about where you could invest your time in pursuing opportunities to work with us. This is about building trust through transparency and giving you the information you need to compete effectively. So now I might just turn to resources and support, which we are providing to assist you to take advantage of the new policy framework. I certainly want to talk to you about our supplier roadshows, which are happening this year. As part of our commitment to our regional buyers and suppliers, we're bringing our procurement experts to you in multiple regional locations across Queensland. These are free face-to-face events designed specifically for suppliers. We're planning 2 rounds of roadshows this year, one in late March or April and another in September. Specific locations and dates will be announced soon. So what makes these valuable? These are practical, interactive workshops where you can learn how to position your business for success, including tips on proposal writing, addressing evaluation criteria, and how to tell your story effectively. And here's the best part. You can bring your specific questions and have them answered by specific relevant procurement experts from government. You'll also have the chance to network with other buyers from government agencies and other businesses in your area. You'll have the chance to think with them about potential future bids. Registration will open soon. The best way to stay informed is to sign up for a supplier newsletter. The QR code is on the screen. When registration opens, newsletter subscribers will be some of the first to know. These events fill up quickly, so don't wait when registration opens. Please mark your calendars for late March and September and keep an eye out for those announcements. We're committed to supporting suppliers through the procurement process and have a comprehensive suite of tools to assist you. Although the policy is written for government buyers and agencies to adhere to, you're of course more than welcome to take an in-depth look if you're interested in that detail. It will help inform for you the perspective of those government buyers. You can access a copy of the QPP online. The same with the supplier code of conduct that Chris has talked about earlier. This is particularly important for you to understand, as he described. Resources for supplying to government are available on the Business Queensland website. There's a QR code on the screen to link you directly to that site. And as I mentioned, sign up for our supplier mailing list. It only means 3 to 4 emails per year. We're committed to not spamming you, but giving you quality information through that channel. And it does include invitations to special events like this webinar, to roadshows and to other supplier events. and review those upcoming events. If you're on that mailing list, as I say, they will pop up straight into your inbox. At that point, I might just turn to Chris again to invite him to talk to you about resources available in the procurement assurance space.
Sure. We have them listed there online for you. There's the framework. So the procurement assurance model is section 3 of the QPP, and then the more detailed, outline is in the framework, and that's listed there. There's also some guidance for suppliers, which you can see. There's an information guide around, it's really sort of an evidence guide if you should be one of the businesses that's part of an assessment or investigation. But I suppose I'd just highlight there that generally our processes do not require you to produce any record that you would not otherwise have. So that should be fairly straightforward. And there are some contacts there for complaints and for any inquiries. So in relation to the PAM.
Thanks for that, Chris. So I just might talk about some offerings from our partner agencies with whom we work closely in terms of by making business easier for you to do with us and to provide you with the supports you need to build your business. The Department of State Development, Infrastructure and Planning, for example, provides an additional source of support, especially if you're interested in large-scale projects. Think, for example, of the Olympics and Paralympics 2032 infrastructure, major road and rail projects or large developments. They offer specialised guidance in areas like cybersecurity, which is increasingly important in government contracts. They provide workshops on environmental, social and governance considerations in procurement. And if you're interested in defence industry work, they have capability development programs that are tailored to that field as well. They can provide you with information about how major project procurement works, which runs differently from routine government procurement. If you're a supplier with the scale and capability to participate in those major projects, or if you're looking to build that capability, these are really valuable resources for you. If you're a small supplier, as I mentioned earlier, you might be interested in subcontracting into those major projects, and this support can help you understand how to position yourself. This is in addition to, not instead of, this procurement support we've been discussing today. Think of it as tailored support to a very specific type of government work, major projects. And the website link is up on the screen right now. The Queensland Government also has a dedicated small business procurement advisor and a business assist service to help make it easier for small businesses, small and family businesses, to engage with and to supply to government. That advisor's name is Frank Deneen, and his role includes championing and advocating for Queensland small businesses within procurement and providing expert advice to buyers about how to prioritise Queensland small and family businesses. He also directly engages with small and family businesses themselves about pathways to supplying to the Queensland Government. If you're a small or family business, especially if you're in regional or remote Queensland, I do want you to make sure you know about the Queensland Government Business Assist. They're a single trusted entry point to government business services who support small and family businesses to easily navigate the services and supports available to them. What can they help with? They can help with personalised service that connect your business to the right government support. They can make it easier for small business to connect. They're local, accessible, ready to meet suppliers wherever wherever they are. They work across Queensland Government agencies to understand services and programs, how they can help you. They build cross-agency partnerships in the regions as well as statewide. And they build those partnerships indeed across local government, chambers of commerce, industry associations. So these are local contacts that understand the regional context that you're operating in. The local or state government programs that assist your business to grow. They're a particularly valuable resource if you're in regional or remote areas. It's a reassurance that you're not forgotten or left to figure this out on your own. There are advisors in your communities across Queensland ready to help you. Within Queensland Government Procurement, we also have a dedicated social procurement advisor. This role is responsible for leading social procurement work to support the Queensland Government to deliver added social value through its procurement activities. This includes spending with genuine quality social enterprises. The role is required to work across all the points of government, along with external stakeholders such as key bodies and major suppliers to provide social procurement related support and advice. Some focus areas for this program include facilitating collaboration, identifying opportunities, providing guidance to agencies and suppliers, and developing and implementing tools and resources. And so I think, Andrew, that concludes my presentation. So I'll hand back to yourself.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Peter and Chris. Well, we've come to that point in the presentation where now we're going to try and answer as many of the questions that you've been dutifully putting through in the chat as we can. It's impossible for us to answer it succinctly. What we might do is take it offline. But obviously, let me repeat earlier, if you do have a specific question you'd like to ask of us, use the email address that we have at the bottom of the screen earlier on, and we'll throw both of those addresses into chat, I think. I saw someone asking that before. So let's throw it over to the team who've been tracking through. We'll put all of our panellists up there, I think. And let's start with some of the questions then, Jo.
There were many questions that have come through. Some of them have been grouped together, but a reminder that if you feel like your question hasn't been answered, please direct your questions to the Better Procurement email address that is in the chat, but I will pop it in again at the end of the session. But yeah, so the first question, there's a few around panels. Firstly, is the intent to manage all future external contract labour resources via contingent worker panels rather than fixed-term secondment agreements? If so, will there be an opportunity for vendors to make a submission to the contingent worker panel out of cycle to ensure continuity of existing seconded services?
So we are going to be going through a refresh of the contingent labour panel. That panel sits within the general goods and services category. And we will be looking at the operational composition of that panel in the coming months. So short answer, yes, there will be an opportunity for suppliers to submit their interest in joining that panel.
Another one, I'll group the panels together. So what will the interval be between the ability to get on a pre-qualified supplier panel, and would you consider following the local buy model where there is an opportunity to get on the panel every quarter?
It's a good question. There will be something similar to that model. What we've asked each of the categories to do is to identify what an appropriate interval would be. Obviously, if it's a very large panel, you might have a different approach than if it's a very small panel. It's a very complex process requiring lots of certification and demonstration. It's going to be a little bit horses for courses. We will, within each panel though, identify and publish what that interval will be. And there's an expectation for the agencies that own those panels to be able to provide sensible justification and rationale behind it when they do.
Panels where suppliers originally appointed to a panel have since merged or been acquired, resulting in effective market consolidation. For example, a panel of 10 suppliers now operating as 5 corporate groups. Is there a mechanism for the panel to be reassessed? And how does government ensure this consolidation does not reduce competition or create market concentration and consistency?
Absolutely. So the role of the category councils within the new QPP has been significantly enhanced. They now have the responsibility to ensure, or for ensuring, that any panel arrangements that exist within that category are both current, curated and effective, and that includes potentially looking at re-tendering or even retiring panels if they're no longer operating the way they should. So just a reminder, each of those major procurement categories: general goods and services, ICT, medical, building construction and maintenance, transport infrastructure services and social services procurement. So they're the 6 major categories. Each category is managed or led, if you will, by an agency that has principal responsibility within that portfolio. So, for example, the Department of Housing and Public Works leads 2 of those categories. We have the general goods and services category and the building construction and maintenance category. Department of Transport on Main Roads owns the transport category and so on. So within each portfolio agency, the responsibility for those categories sits, and they will be accountable ultimately through the Queensland Government Procurement Committee back to government for ensuring that they go through that process of resetting and refreshing the panels in a timely way.
Last one. There's a question about the process on how to get on a panel, what forms need to be filled out, what government sites they can find those.
So as Peter mentioned, the Queensland Procurement Solution is the place where panel opportunities will be advertised. Strongly encourage and underscore Peter's exhortation that you have a supplier portal, a supplier profile on the procurement solution, and that you are registered for alerts of any forthcoming opportunities that match your organisation's capabilities or areas of interest.
The purposeful procurement. Could you talk about the 2 to 4 focus areas in terms of the PPP outcomes some more? It seems like agencies could possibly avoid some intended outcomes by simply not selecting them. How will that work in practice?
So the way that the PPPs have been defined, they're the 12 areas that government wanted to focus our attention towards when you're looking beyond price in any procurement. The category strategies are the vehicle through which each of the categories now articulates how they're going to meet those high-level government commitments. And agencies in their own procurements are expected to now demonstrate how they're going to achieve the objectives that are within the category strategies. The PPPs are the vehicles or the levers, if you like, that get pulled to make sure that agency procurements will deliver on those objectives within the categories. It is possible, and it is encouraged, that agencies will choose different ones from time to time, depending on the procurement that they want to achieve. So there is no perfect mechanism for ensuring that every PPP gets an equal opportunity. It's going to really be related to what each individual procurement is seeking to achieve and how that will then contribute to the attainment of the objectives within the category strategy and ultimately government's objectives for the community.
There's also a few questions around the application of the QPP to local government. So will the changes apply to local government tenders? Are they not bound by the QPP? Can you please talk to the extent at which the government intends for the QPP to apply to any local government?
So I think our Minister might have answered this quite clearly previously. No, the QPP does not apply to local government at this point. There is no intention or appetite to bring local government agencies within scope of the QPP, although, of course, we welcome any conversation with local government authorities about accessing our arrangements if appropriate. And we continue to collaborate in that regard.
There was a few questions as well around the verification methods of with respect to the targets, but also the system and the badging. So questions around what the verification methods were for social and for Indigenous businesses. And there was also a question about Indigenous badging in the QPS.
So thank you for that, Jodie. No, I guess as a threshold, we require third-party verification of certification, so not self-certification, and we do undertake, as a government, we do undertake some due diligence around the standards that attach to particular certification mechanisms. Now, those calls are made by the agencies responsible for the policy area, and so those calls are sacred social enterprise. That call has been made by Queensland Treasury, having done that due diligence around those two certification verification systems in terms of people and planet first and social traders. In the Indigenous space, that's one of the spaces that we are ambitious to continue to work forward and work with and look for the opportunity to undertake badging. We're in discussions at the moment with Department of Women and Torres Strait Islander partnerships and multiculturalism as the department responsible for that piece, and we're in discussion with them and with certification bodies to settle which certification bodies will be recognised in that space.
In the same realm, there was a few questions that came through about third-party certifiers or any kind of pre-qualification central system for veterans, veteran-owned businesses and female-owned businesses.
So essentially my answer there is the same. So we're actively talking to Department of the Premier and Cabinet, which is the host agency for Veterans Queensland, about understanding what the certification, what the recognised certification bodies will be in that space, and similarly to Office for Women in terms of the recognition of female-owned businesses.
Also a question here around, there's a few questions that came through around the calculation or measurement in terms of value for money and whether that's contract value, addressable spend, or whether that is evaluating this along the bottom line and price to assess social return on investment.
The QPP defines value as being more than the bottom line. So value for money doesn't mean simply the cheapest tender. Clearly, there's a recognition, there's a strong recognition of QPP that we are the custodians of public money, and respect for taxpayer dollars is ranks very highly in terms of the focus of the QPP. So I don't want to resolve from that, but clearly government understands that that value is broader than just price and quantity. It includes factors like local benefits, regional benefits, and the other benefits which you saw in terms of purposeful procurement. So it's a balance, but respect for taxpayers' dollars plus an inclusion of recognition that those other factors contribute.
Yeah. There's also a few questions that came in around the updated concept of local in the new policy. So specifically, there was a question referencing that local will now be considered within 250 kilometres, and looking to confirm or have some more information about whether that's a change to the 3 radius zones previously used in the policy.
Yes, that is a change. So the previous policy had as its first focus area a 125k radius. As we mentioned, it was a 125k radius from where the work was to be delivered, and unfortunately that required us to ask suppliers to identify where their workforce sat in terms of the project, which was sometimes simple and sometimes not. So there's a red tape reduction piece just to begin with in terms of simplifying that definition to radius around the main place of business in your business. It is a 250k radius, which is part of the focus, and that recognises that in much of Queensland, 125k's doesn't actually get you very far. Of course, in South East Queensland it does. so it's a balancing piece, and but certainly we have sought to free up accessibility to procurement for suppliers who aren't just, if you like, in those major provisions.
And there's also a similar question around local, and the questions, there was a few questions relating to evidencing local. So a couple relating to questions about whether a local business is acquired by a large or multinational business and whether there's any checks and balances from SOAs, any panels or previous arrangements, or whether head offices of business being in Queensland, but business is large and based elsewhere, whether that classifies them as local as well.
Essentially, it should not. In terms of we're looking to support Queensland businesses and businesses with workforces local to the work. So that's essentially what we're looking for. Now, corporate structures can be very complicated. So it's the question sort of presupposes quite a simple example where you've got a business and it's perhaps acquired by a multinational business. There are many variations on that theme. There are part ownerships of business. There are corporate structures which vary from simple one. We provide guidance to our buyers to avoid what we call shop fronting. So in other words, setting up a shop front or just having a post office box is clearly not enough to meet the criteria for local in terms of our procurement policy. Obviously, with 40,000 suppliers, there's great movement in our supply market. The person posing the question is right to call out the need for our buyers to remain alert, particularly when they're managing common use supply arrangements to those changes. I can just tell you that I know that they are. I talked to my colleague in the general goods and services area, and I know that team is alert to changes in their supply market. As I say, there's a lot of suppliers out there, but there is a real and genuine effort to understand those changes and to ensure that when we're portioning valuation criteria to the local factor, that's genuinely local.
A few questions on the PAM that I'll pose to you. The first one being, will contracts agreed to under the ESM later be migrated into the PAM?
Yeah, there's a transition arrangement in the PAM framework, but basically the old BPP audits are finished, so that'll be the end of those. But if you've got contract commitments that were done under the ESM that are similar to or the same as under the Supply Code of Conduct, or you've got a commitment to the Supply Code of Conduct, and whatever, if that issue relates to that, then there's a transition, so the process can proceed. The other caveat is that you cannot receive a consequence any greater than that which is provided for under the old system. You can receive a lesser one, but you can't receive a greater one. More likely you'll receive a lesser one under the new PAM arrangements.
Question as well around the it was identified that the ESM had a focus on construction, resulting in 25 to 30 audits per year. The PAM extends to wider procurement categories, and there will be approximately 5 assurance activities per year. They're looking for confirmation or a bit more information on whether that will mean that there will simply be random and or targeted, or whether it's a targeted approach to audits rather than for every contract.
That's definitely not for every contract. We have a small team, and I'm not sure the number of contracts in state government, but it's tens of thousands. So, no, so the process is that the category councils that you've heard Peter and Andrew talk about will provide us with a list of 5 contracts or projects that they think, because they're the experts in the area, not us, that they think have some potential risk or are high value attached to them, and they'll be the ones that we will look at. So for each area, around 5 or 6. Because we're just starting, that's not a hard and fast, arrangement, but that's the process. So they're not random in the sense that we don't get a random selector across all government contracts and pick those. It is targeted based on the category council's risk assessment.
Last theme from a couple of questions that came through was around the capability building, whether that will only be available to contracted suppliers or to all businesses, and also around all the minor and moderate issues, the understanding that folks training and correction, will there still be a record of those things that evaluators consider in tender evaluations?
Yeah, okay. So on the first issue, we're hoping that the page on the website that we have will be available for everybody. So you won't have to be a contracted supplier. It's a public Business Queensland website, which is available for everyone. People can go on there, and if they think there's something that they might be interested on, follow the link, and that will be available for all suppliers, many of whom are here today, not just contracted suppliers. And the second matter in relation to the record, so we will maintain a record of sanctions, which is the major and the moderate. We haven't yet determined the period for that. It'll probably be 2 or 3 years. But for the lower level, there will be no record. So if there's been a minor matter and you've conducted the capability building, and we're happy with that, that literally is the end of the matter. We maintain a government portal, but that is only visible to the government. It's not visible to the public, and that includes where their record is. But even on that, the capability building or the minor record will not be kept. So it is literally minor matter fixed. It is set and forget for the minor matters.
We had a number of questions come through regarding clarity in the systems that you spoke through, Peter.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of questions around there was a few people that thought that Queensland Government was switching to vendor panel, and they're just looking for clarification around the relationship between vendor panel or queue tenders, and if the local buy fits in anywhere. If you could clarify those.
Absolutely. So yes, vendor panel was vendor panel, I should say, because they've had we've just been talking about acquisitions. So they've been acquired, so they've become a uni market. That vendor panel platform is the Queensland Procurement Solution. When I was talking before about the QPS, that's the vendor panel technology. As I said before, queue tenders is where you can see opportunities without logging in terms of responding to opportunities and posting the profile. You need to do that in the QPS. Anyway, now in terms of local buy are our delivery partners in terms of our QPS implementation. That doesn't mean that we are part of their procurement world. That's a technology partnership, and so our arrangements stand separately. And for example, I know we get a lot of questions about whether this means there'll be charges on suppliers for participating in our arrangements, and the answer to that is no. There won't be. Our arrangements stand separately.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for your presentation, for your attention to our presentations. I'm sorry we've reached the end of the time that we're able to allocate to this today. I hope we were able to get through a number of the questions that people wanted to ask of us. As we said earlier, those email addresses are in the chat. Please do send through more detailed or direct or specific questions if you have them to the team. We'd love to hear from you. My only closing remark is, look, I look forward to continuing to talk about QPP 2026 and work with all of our stakeholders, both buyers and suppliers, to ensure that the government is able to deliver on its vision for outcomes for Queensland. And I hope to see you in another one of these sessions. So thank you very much to our speakers, and thank you to everyone for joining the webinar today. Have a great day.